In hockey, and in any team sport really, chemistry on and off the ice is vital to a team's success. However, every now and then, there's been pairs of players on specific teams that turned out to be the worst imaginable influence on each other, meaning that, since they spent lots of time together, the duo unfortunately turned out to resemble a toxic combination. Now, we're definitely not here to say that anyone on this list is a bad person. Not at all. Just that they may have been at the wrong place at the wrong time. And with that, here are 3 pairs of NHL teammates that could have been the worst possible influence on each other. For Jeff Carter and Mike Richards, you could say that their stories almost mirrored each other's for a hot minute. Both players were able to gain NHL recognition via the Ontario Hockey League. From there, Richards and Carter were a long-term package deal. Beginning in 2003, the duo was selected by the same team in Philadelphia, with Carter going 11th overall from the stacked draft class and Richards 24th. From there, they reported back to their respective OHL teams for the following season, and then, simultaneously, joined the Flyers' AHL affiliate team, the Philadelphia Phantoms, for the postseason. Due to the NHL lockout, most likely, Carter and Richards continued the same pattern for the 2004-2005 season as well, and even won the Calder Cup with the Phantoms in 2005. However, after the 2005 NHL lockout was said and done with, the pair finally made their NHL debuts in the 2005-2006 season. Both players turned into very capable centers for their team, and were even routinely receiving Selke votes for their two-way game. However, the first domino per se fell in December of 2009, when Peter Laviolette was brought in to replace John Stevens as head coach. According to an article from NBC Sports, Laviolette immediately instituted a rule that he referred to as the Dry Island Rule, meaning that all players were asked to commit to the policy, which stated that upon making the pledge, you promise not to drink any alcohol for a solid month. Also, according to the source, both Richards and Carter were absent from the first exercise and continued to be for the next 5 times it was enforced. Well, by 2010, both players were notably seen as faces of the franchise. Richards was given captaincy back in 2008, shortly before signing a 12-year, $69 million deal. Carter would soon follow suit in November of 2010 by agreeing to terms to his own 11-year contract valued at $58 million. Therefore, less than a year later, it's pretty understandable as to why the hockey world was so shocked after the GM at the time, Paul Holmgren, made the decision to trade both Carter and Richards that summer. For one, the team was considered to be, at the time, a cup contender that had made 5 straight postseason appearances, including a run to the 2010 Stanley Cup Final. Carter initially was traded to Columbus and Richards to Los Angeles. Soon after the dust settled in Philly, multiple reports began to surface about the true reasons behind the stunning moves. One report from the Philadelphia Inquirer, which I'll link below, states that 2 unnamed teammates on the Flyers roster revealed that they were disappointed in the pair for their long-standing partying ways, and that teammates in the room were concerned for their well-being. An article from NESN also states that the duo was partially traded due to their inability to follow the Dry Island policy, and by doing so, upset the front office and also their teammates. Of course, the GM, when asked about the allegations, denied them, while surely wanting to minimize any bad PR. But one thing's for certain, things eventually worked out for both parties involved. After Carter was eventually traded to LA from Columbus, the forward arrived just in time to hoist one of 2 Stanley Cups alongside his longtime friend and teammate, Mike Richards. You could say that for Zach Parise and Ryan Suter, their paths have found ways to cross each other multiple times throughout their careers so far. Growing up relatively close to one another, Suter, who hails from Wisconsin, and Parise, from Minnesota, entered into the U.S. National Development Program that's based in Michigan, only to compete side by side for the gold medal in the 2004 World Junior Championships. And just like that, their draft class of 2003, the U.S. team was stacked and was able to defeat a young Sidney Crosby and Team Canada. Even though they were instantly tied together due to their origins, at the NHL level, the pair would be representing separate teams for nearly a decade. As the year prior to their success with Team USA, Parise and Suter were both drafted within the first round. Well, after playing the first half of their careers for different teams, the pair was reunited in the Twin Cities. And you could say that the two struck gold simultaneously, as they were given identical contracts valued at $98 million apiece in 2012. Even when the contracts were signed initially, NHL fans and spectators alike were questioning if the pair would even be finishing their monstrous 13-year deals out in the end. Well, fast forward about 9 years into their contracts, and sure enough, due to the decision made by GM Billy Guerin, both players were bought out in July of 2021. And at the time, the move was seen as abrupt and rather shocking, as these two franchise faces had been with the team for more than 1/3 of its entire existence. But things always have a way of coming out into the open one way or another. Even though we knew that, thanks to Michael Russo of The Athletic, that Ryan Suter hung up on Guerin once he delivered the news, for a while, we had no idea what truly lied behind the surface. And it wasn't long after that longtime Wild reporter Judd Zulgad revealed the truth that he had kept hidden regarding the Wisconsin native. Zulgad went on to reveal that Suter had a very close relationship with team owner Craig Leopold, and said that Suter played a part in bringing in Paul Fenton to act as a GM from Nashville. You could say that Leopold, and even Fenton in some ways, enabled Suter for years and allowed him to control various aspects of the team. But he wasn't alone when it came to the entitled behavior. Former Minnesota Wild forward Torrey Mitchell, who joined the Score North podcast, corroborated seeing the same type of entitlement as Arnott claimed that he saw from Suter in Nashville. Mitchell explained that Parise and Suter both had bought houses in Edina, which is a suburb outside of Minneapolis, and continuously lobbied for the team to have their practices at Edina's high school rink instead of Xcel Energy Center, which he explained is also the Wild's practice facility. The duo was granted their request, and they were practicing, according to Mitchell, 3 times a week at the high school that was 5 minutes from Suter and Parise's houses. That's the power they had early on, Mitchell says. Zulgad, after saying he knew of the hold the pair had on the team, said, quote, "The problems that Torrey just documented, they are the tip of the iceberg of why these two became so despised," end quote. Even though it does look like Suter in hindsight was more to blame for the dysfunction, Parise also seemed to buy into what Suter was selling and went right along with it until the very end. Unlike the past 2 cases, this one is a little different, namely because these 2 players' journeys to the NHL were nothing alike. For Minnesota native Blake Wheeler, his path included playing for a local prep school in Minneapolis and suiting up for the University of Minnesota. As for Scheifele, who grew up in Kitchener, Ontario, he decided to take the OHL route while playing for the Barrie Colts. The gap in their ages allowed for Wheeler, who was drafted in 2004, to play for Boston and Atlanta both prior to Scheifele's draft day. Therefore, the duo was part of the inaugural season for Winnipeg. And you could say really from the beginning, the two had undeniable chemistry. As the years went on, both players quickly became known as cornerstone players for the Jets franchise. However, in 2016, Wheeler and Scheifele both had to adjust to the fact that they were no longer the only stars in town. After the Jets drafted 2nd overall pick Patrik Laine, much of the attention shifted from the 2 veterans to the 18-year-old whose shot release was the best that spectators had seen since Alex Ovechkin's. Scheifele, who began receiving top-line minutes in 2016, had been consistently playing up to that point, with Blake Wheeler on the first line. And according to an article from Sportsnet that I'll reference below, he had assisted on an astounding 58% of Scheifele's goals. By the time the 2019-2020 season rolled around, however, Scheifele was paired with Laine quite a bit. For Wheeler, though, the change of pace may have not been to his liking. After notching an impressive 91 points for 2 consecutive seasons, once his ice time went down, well, so did his point totals. And really looking at the sequence of events here, and putting it into perspective, everything else we're about to go over will all make total sense. So essentially, Laine is traded to Columbus in exchange for Pierre-Luc Dubois. However, it's after Laine's departure from Canada that we learned the real reason as to why he suddenly wanted out of Winnipeg. According to a Finnish source, which I'm not going to attempt to pronounce, Laine revealed that his desire for a new team stemmed from the treatment he endured at the hands of, you guessed it, Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler. Laine claims his teammates constantly bullied him, and that head coach at the time, Parise, was too afraid to step in. The source stated that the reasoning behind it was due to Wheeler feeling threatened by Laine due to his ice time changes. Scheifele made the effort to tag team and join in regarding the harassment. Even though the reason behind Paul Maurice's departure is still unknown, some do speculate that it could have been related to the dysfunction behind the scenes. But what we do know is that to be one of the most stacked teams on paper in one of the weaker divisions in the league and still not make the playoffs, there has to be an internal reason for it.